Hello, howdy Krishna, I'm George Haddison. Welcome back to Showreel. This week, Andrew and I are reviewing the film Jobs. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Steve, it takes guts to drop out like you did.
Higher education comes at the expense of experience.
Boss!
What are you working on?
It's a computer terminal that hooks up to the TV for the display. Steve? Wow. These are state of the art. Nobody's making anything like this. All right, okay.
Welcome to Apple Computer.
Is this everything?
Startup.
I think we should start with around 90 grand.
Could you repeat that?
If you'll have me aboard.
Trust me, on my INDEPENDENT.
Apple Incorporated went public this morning.
Chasing dreams since I was 14. Y'all can't stop me.
We gotta make the small things unforgettable.
Typeface isn't a pressing issue.
Get out.
He's trying to start a war with IBM.
Steve's been doing the impossible ever since he was in a garage.
I'm trying to build an Apple, and they're taking it away from me.
If you keep heading down this path, I will not protect you. It's a blatant ripoff.
I'm gonna sue you for every cent.
You are your own worst enemy.
The board is unanimous. Steve will no longer be involved in this company.
10 years after Steve Jobs' departure, the future of Apple Computer is in jeopardy.
In life, you only get to do so many things.
I'm gonna make Apple cool again. Here's to the crazy ones. The misfits. The rebels. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Jobs, directed by Joshua Michael Stern and written by Matt Whiteley, is an American biographical drama about Apple founder Steve Jobs, played surprisingly well by Ashton Kutcher. It begins with Steve Jobs launching the iPod, here seen as the pinnacle of human creation. It then goes back to where it all began. Steve has dropped out of college, where he still hangs around attending classes and sleeping with a girl. He then takes acid for an unnecessarily long montage. Eventually, he decides to get into the computer business when he sees his friend Steve Wozniak's invention, the Apple I. They name their new business Apple, stealing the name of the Beatles record company. Overcoming obstacles by being a maverick businessman, Steve Jobs builds Apple into a successful company with a little help from his friends. Concerned that he cares too much about minor details, Jobs has many altercations with the board, and he is eventually fired. But of course, Apple needs him, and they welcome him back with open arms. The film takes itself way too seriously, and computer design is shown as being far more important than it really is. Steve Jobs is portrayed as if he is some sort of god. When he talks, people stand in silence to listen intently to his every word, and they applaud everything he does. The film obviously takes a lot of liberties with the truth for the sake of drama. While not entirely unenjoyable, overall I found the film a bit boring. It's far too long, but perhaps people who like Steve Jobs will like it. I'm giving it 2 out of 5 stars. What did you think, Andrew?
Well, I agree with your final conclusion on the film. I disagree with almost everything else you said. It's very clear this film is trying to replicate Aaron Sorkin's 2010 movie The Social Network. I loved The Social Network. It wasn't as much of a biographical film than it was a film based on true events. The problem Jobs had, I feel, is that it was trying to be a biographical film without getting any details correct. As Matt said, the film tells the story of Steve Jobs from the conception of Apple to his reinstatement as the CEO and the launch of the iPod in 2001. This film has been getting a huge amount of criticism for being wildly inaccurate from people who are familiar with the real story, including Apple's co-founder Steve Wozniak himself. I feel when you take out the historical inaccuracies, the truth you get from the film is the character of Steve Jobs himself. The way Jobs is represented in the film is certainly not flattering at times, but it shows, from what is publicly known anyway, the eccentric and slightly crazy enigma that is Jobs. As Matt said, there is a running idea in this film about the importance of physical computer design. I don't think the creators of the film were trying to say computer design is insanely important, but I think what they were trying to say is how important Jobs thought it was. After all, the film is called Jobs, not Apple. For Apple fans like myself, not only will the film's historical inaccuracy annoy, but it won't tell you anything new about the character of Jobs. I feel if this was a historical story about the rise, downfall, and reinstatement of a tech company's tyrannical dictator, it could be interesting. The Social Network surprised many because it wasn't just for techno geeks. This surprised me because it definitely wasn't for techno geeks. I feel my review today has been a bit confusing, but the film was also. If you're bored, sure, go see the film. The second half is definitely more entertaining than the first, but none of the film is traditionally entertaining Hollywood style. I give it 3 stars out of 5.
So, you're an Apple fan, you say?
I am. I wouldn't call myself a fanboy because I take things not in moderation. I just think personally for me, I just happen to own a lot of Apple stuff just because it happens to be my favorite. But I also don't like a lot of Apple stuff. And the thing is, I came into this movie knowing a lot about the subjects, a lot about the way the story already, and the historical inaccuracies really annoyed me. But for somebody who doesn't know all these things, I think it would have been a very different reaction, is the thing.
Yeah, well, I didn't actually know really anything about Steve Jobs. I'm not an Apple fan. I like iPods, but that's about it. I prefer PCs. So I know I'm not a fan of Steve Jobs. I thought if I was, maybe I would like it more, because I mean, I like documentaries and films about the Beatles because I'm a fan, and I thought maybe I just didn't like this because I didn't like the subject matter. But you seem to think that
I don't think that's not... I think it doesn't make a difference, personally. The thing I have is I was thinking, a film like The Social Network works really well because it's a Hollywood film, a traditional Hollywood film, loosely based off the story of Facebook.
Very loosely.
Like, it was marketed originally as a biopic about Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, but it isn't, and everyone realized that. It's just a really great story that they kind of plucked from reality.
Yeah.
And I feel what this is they've tried to make a biopic, but then most biopics make no money. So they've tried to make money by also making it a Hollywood thing and combine the two, and that really just didn't work.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they definitely got Ashton Kutcher to give it that kind of star power, but I thought, when I saw the trailer, I thought he'd be terrible. I thought he's nothing like Steve Jobs. Good. But he was actually good. And he didn't look exactly like him. He was obviously too fit, and his face is too wide.
Yeah.
Because he never had cancer.
Yeah.
But he well, he did.
Yeah.
But I mean, he looks too young as well.
Yeah.
But apart from that, he did a pretty good job. I mean, I thought his walking was a little forced sometimes, where he kind of slumped over a lot.
I was surprised when they made him like old man Jobs to introduce the iPod.
That looked good.
That was like surprisingly really, really good. Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting film just because I'm not really sure how to think of it. I think it did need a bit of a trim time-wise. It was probably a bit too long. And the second half was definitely more entertaining. And there were a huge amount of things left out. If you want the true story of Apple, you should go read that Steve Jobs novel that I can't remember the writer, but it's the only like official Steve Jobs.
Or just read Wikipedia.
Oh, Wikipedia, yeah.
Well, that's all we have time for today. For all the latest Showreel news and birthdays of celebrities, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, and you can watch past episodes on YouTube.
Don't forget to listen to our free podcast on iTunes.
Well, it's time for outro or duck. How will we end the episode? Will it be an outro or a duck? It's a duck! Andrew, can you feel that? It's time for us to regenerate into new hosts.
I don't want to go.
Damn, still not ginger.
I'm a girl.
Shut up! Oh, that was rude. Rude and not ginger.
Well, join Marc and me, Jacob, next week for another episode of Showreel. We'll see you then. Bye.